Now, as 2021 comes to an end, it's only right that I make a recap of some of my favorite movies and films that I've watched over the past year. There have been a ton of great blockbuster hits, as well as a lot of movies that have come out on streaming platforms to make it a lot more accessible for a lot of people to watch all types of content. So today I've got a list of almost 20 to 25 different films that I've seen over the past year that I wanted to share with you guys. I did this about a year ago and a lot of people really seem to enjoy it. So let's go ahead and get started with our 2021 recap of the best films. Now, in my previous video, I actually broke it up based on the genre, but for this, I'm going to break it up into the different platforms that these movies are available on. And obviously, we're going to have to start with in-theater releases. Last night, I finally got around to watching Spider-Man No Way Home. And to be honest, this is probably going to hold my title for the best movie of 2021. I'm not going to spoil anything, but for those of you who have seen it, I'm sure you guys can agree that overall, it was just a spectacular film. The cinematography, the acting, the cast, everything was just chef's kiss, man. It was like literally the perfect movie, and I've got to say it's probably one of my favorite Marvel movies, if not my favorite Marvel movie of all time. In addition to that, obviously Black Widow came out. I did see that in theaters in IMAX. To be honest, it was a little bit underwhelming. However, I still think it was a really great spotlight, especially for Scarlett Johansson to have her own feature film. So that was definitely a worthwhile watch. It is also available on Disney+. And finally, the third Marvel movie I watched in theaters is going to be Shang-Chi. Obviously, you gotta rep the Asian culture, man. That movie just really broke a lot of boundaries. To see Simu Liu, Awkwafina, and the entire cast was honestly an incredible experience to watch it in theaters. I definitely teared up a little bit, and it just meant a lot for me as an Asian American to kind of see an Asian superhero. So Shang-Chi was definitely in my top 5 movies of 2021. Obviously, we've got to talk about Fast 9. If you don't know, I'm a huge fan of the entire Fast and Furious series, and obviously Fast 9, they gotta go bigger, they gotta go better, and the stunts and all the different things that they were pulling off was honestly pretty incredible. I really enjoy watching the behind the scenes to see how they pulled off these stunts in real life. It's pretty incredible. So if you haven't watched Fast 9, I definitely recommend checking that one out. Now, this next film is from a Korean director named Justin Chon. You guys probably recognize him. He's in a lot of different movies, but he recently featured, wrote, and directed in Blue Bayou. I saw this in theaters, and honestly, it brought tears to my eyes. I highly recommend finding a streaming service where you can watch it on because it touched on a lot of deep subjects, especially about immigrant children. So it's honestly a pretty heartwarming film, and I definitely recommend you guys to check that one out. Now, next up, we're going to be talking about Apple TV. To be honest, Apple TV has really been coming out with some bangers. Their shows particularly have been over the top, and if you guys are interested, I'm actually going to do an entire separate video of my favorite TV shows, so definitely let me know in the comments down below. However, over the past year, they came out with 2 movies in particular that I thought were actually pretty well made. The first one is going to be Coda, which actually stands for Child of Deaf Adults. It was actually nominated for a ton of awards. I'm pretty sure it won one at Sundance, but it touched on a deaf family where one child could actually hear, and in fact, she was an incredible singer, and so the conflict of her parents never being able to listen to her sing was a really interesting story. I highly recommend watching it. And the second movie is actually one that recently came out called Swan Song. It features a really great actor, Mahershala Ali. It's a science fiction movie based in the future where you're basically able to replicate yourself if you have a terminal illness and you don't want your family to know, and your clone will essentially take your spot, and the main character just comes into this conflict of whether or not he actually wants to go through with this. Honestly, the cinematography, the editing, the acting was all stellar. I highly recommend watching Swan Song as well. Alright, next up, let's move over to Netflix. And I'm not gonna lie, Netflix has kind of been on the weaker side when it comes to their movies. However, they did have a handful of thriller and action films that came out. The first one I'm going to be talking about is going to be Red Notice, featuring The Rock, Ryan Reynolds, and Gal Gadot. To be honest, that all-star cast definitely meant that it was going to be a pretty good film, and overall it was just a really great family-friendly movie. Another great star-studded action film is going to be Project Power, featuring Jamie Foxx, Machine Gun Kelly, Joseph Gordon-Levitt. It's basically kind of like a superhero movie where you can ingest this pill and you're given this sort of superpower. To be honest, because I like superhero movies, I actually really enjoyed this film as well. Definitely recommend checking it out. Next up, if you're a fan of like thriller horror movies, definitely you gotta watch something called Blood Red Sky. To be honest, I had no idea what I was getting when I started this, but I won't spoil any of it. But it's basically a group of terrorists hijacks this plane, and this mother of a child really goes to some desperate lengths to protect and save the entire crew. I will give you a little heads up because it is a little bit graphic, but it is something that really just had me on the edge of my seat the entire time. Next up, a couple of drama movies that I really enjoyed. The first one is going to be Malcolm and Marie, featuring Zendaya and John David Washington. This entire film is actually shot in black and white. To be honest, it's probably one of the few films that I've seen completely in black and white, but it really did bring a lot more depth and emotion into the film. And the entire film is actually set through the course of one night, so this movie really isn't about crazy action or crazy editing. It's very much dialogue and acting focused. However, I think both actors do a stellar job and highly recommend checking this one out as well. And the second drama is a film called The Guilty. This one stars Jake Gyllenhaal, but he's basically a 911 operator who we see trying to save this woman who's in distress. This is one of those movies where I can't give away too much detail, but it is very much going to have you on the edge of your seat the entire time. So if you're a fan of the crime genre, The Guilty is a must watch. Now, to be honest, there's really nothing worse than when you're trying to watch a film, especially if you're on the go and you're using a mobile device such as your phone or tablet, and you end up running out of juice. This has happened to me countless times on flights or long train rides, which is why a portable power bank is so crucial to make sure all your devices stay juiced. And the one that I've been using lately has been from the people over at INIU. It's basically a wireless power bank. However, the really great thing about this one is that it's actually got fast charging, which, as you know, especially if you're trying to charge something like an iPad or a tablet, you definitely don't want to be waiting around for hours. So the fact that you're able to conveniently and quickly charge your devices back to full charge has been super essential for me to keep watching these movies. Alright, so this is the power bank right here. It's actually got this really cute paw print, kind of reminds me of my dog Louie, but it's actually a battery indicator to show you how much charge is left in the power bank. It's got dual USB ports, which is super convenient so that you can also charge your phone and your tablet at the same time. And to be honest, you never know when you're going to need a feature like this, but it also comes with this portable flashlight, which has actually been super handy. Now for me, obviously, if I'm charging something like an iPad Pro, I am going to need a USB-C cable, which is one they've also provided. But the great thing about this cable is that it actually charges at 100 watts, meaning you have to spend less time waiting around for your devices to charge, and you can enjoy watching your content. If you guys are interested to check out this power bank or the fast charging cable, they will be linked in the description down below. Alright, next up, let's move over to HBO Max. This is a new streaming service. However, they've been coming out with some pretty good films, especially a lot of blockbuster hits have been coming out on HBO Max. So the first one that I highly recommend everyone watch is going to be King Richard. It's based on the life of Serena Venus and Richard Williams, played by Will Smith. Obviously, Will Smith is the GOAT, so he's gonna kill it in every single performance, but this movie honestly just touched a lot of heartstrings. I highly recommend watching it. It shows the struggle of perseverance and endurance, and to be honest, probably ranks in my top 5 movie of the year. The next blockbuster film that came out is going to be Dune. To be honest, I really had no idea what to expect when I started it. However, the cinematography, the editing, everything about Dune was just so on point. Timothée Chalamet obviously killed it. Zendaya, even though we saw her for a brief glimpse, obviously is going to kill it, and I'm very excited for Dune Part 2. So if you didn't watch it in theaters, it's still pretty enjoyable to watch it on HBO Max, and definitely looking forward to the second part coming out. Now, these next 2 movies are kind of more historical films. However, they have some really great leads, and the first one is going to be Judas and the Black Messiah. This was nominated for a bunch of Oscars, and rightly so, because it just tells a really compelling story about the Black Panthers and gives you a lot of context about the things that were happening during that time period. And I'm looking it up right now, and it actually won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor, and the entire cast does a really great job. Now, the second historical movie is going to be a film called 42, based on the life of Jackie Robinson, played by Chadwick Boseman. Man, this just gets me emotional every time I think about it, or every time I watch a Chadwick Boseman movie, but this is kind of one of his last performances, and just like any other performance Boseman has given, he kills it, he knocks it out of the park every single time. And to think this is one of his last performances, especially while he was struggling with cancer, just brings a lot more impact as you watch the film to understand what he was going through, and to kind of realize that we'll never be able to see him in another film. Just made this movie a lot more compelling to watch, and I highly recommend watching it if you haven't already. And my last favorite film from HBO Max is actually going to be In the Heights. It's a musical from the people who created Hamilton, but it's based in New York City. It's just a really great feel-good movie. It's something you can sing along to. It's something you want to dance every time you watch it. It was very much reminiscent of the first time I saw La La Land, so if you enjoyed those type of movies where it's not too much musical based, however there are those musical interludes, you definitely gotta watch In the Heights. Next up, let's move over to Prime Video. To be honest, there were only 2 films that I really enjoyed, and the first one is going to be The Tomorrow War featuring Chris Pratt. This one had a lot of hype and marketing behind it. However, I do think it lived up to the hype because the action, VFX, and editing was all top tier. Probably one of the biggest blockbuster films Prime Video has put out, but definitely worth a watch if you enjoy these kind of action sci-fi movies. And the second one is going to be a thriller called The Lie. Once again, this is a movie I can't really give you too much context about. However, just know that when you get to the end, it's going to be a complete plot twist that you're not going to be expecting. So if you have Prime Video, definitely you gotta watch those 2. Next up, let's move over to Disney Plus. Obviously gonna have some bangers, some family-friendly classics. The first one that I actually really enjoyed was going to be Cruella featuring Emma Stone. Any film she's in, I will absolutely watch. She's probably one of my favorite actresses of all time, but to see her in the role as Cruella, it was very fitting. Her acting was very much on par with the Cruella character, and even though I didn't get to watch this in theaters, it's still a really great film to check it out on streaming. Obviously, I already mentioned Shang-Chi, but I did watch it in theaters, and it is available on Disney Plus. So if you haven't streamed that one, definitely gotta watch that, especially with your family. It's a great film for everyone to enjoy. And last but not least, I've got to give a shout out to a couple of foreign films that I've watched over the past year. To be honest, if you really only limit yourself to watching English movies, you're literally missing out on so many great genres of film out there. Like for me personally, as long as there are subtitles, I would literally watch any sort of foreign film. And the first one is going to be a movie on Netflix called Bad Genius. I'm reading the logline and it says a straight A student who devises an exams cheating scheme which eventually rises to international levels. This movie is in Thai, but the reason I really enjoy this movie is that it's set in a different country, so you're also able to see the different cultures and languages that also brings. The next one is a French movie which I actually had to watch for my French class a couple of years ago, but I recently rewatched it. But it's called Les Intouchables, or The Untouchables. They actually made an American version of this exact same film featuring Kevin Hart. To be honest, the original French film, the first time I watched it, was definitely an emotional one. If you haven't seen this, I definitely recommend watching that original version before you watch the English one, even though that one is a good remake. And finally, I gotta give a shout out to the Korean film industry. They've really been knocking it out of the park lately. Now, the first one is called The Witch, and if you watch Itaewon Class, it features the same girl actress, but it's very much a sci-fi horror thriller film. I won't give away too much context for this one, but if you've been a fan of those dark Korean dramas like Squid Games, or if you've even seen Hellbound, this is very much along those lines. Finally, it's going to be Train to Busan 2 Peninsula. This is a sequel to the super highly popular film Train to Busan 1. Obviously, it's going to be a zombie movie, but it honestly just knocks it out of the park. And huge kudos to the entire Korean film industry. They've really been killing every single movie they've been making. Now, guys, it's going to wrap it up for this video. Like I said, there was quite a long list of movies to go through. Real quick, I'm just going to recap my top 5. So if you guys are kind of limited on time and you really just want the best movies of my list, here we go. In no particular order because I think they're all very different genres, I'll just go ahead and list my top 5. First up, it's got to be Spider-Man No Way Home. Just 10 out of 10. Everything about it, incredible. The acting. I just don't want to give away too many spoilers, so it's very hard for me to speak on it, but must watch in theaters. Number 2 is going to be Blue Bayou. I don't really cry during a lot of movies, but this one I was bawling like a baby. So if that says anything, watch that one. I hate to put another superhero movie, but I'm gonna put Shang-Chi just because of the cultural impact it had for us Asian Americans, and I'm very excited to see what the future holds for us. Number 4, I'm gonna put Dune just because the VFX on that I think were probably the most complex ones that I've seen over the past year. I forgot to mention Tenet is an honorable mention. However, it's kind of hard to find it on a streaming service, which is why I left it off. But other than Tenet, I think Dune had pretty much the best VFX that I saw. And finally, number 5, sheesh, it's kind of hard. Oh, I know, King Richard. Oh, duh. And yeah, so those are the top 5. We got Spider-Man, Blue Bayou, Shang-Chi, Dune, and King Richard. If you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop a like down below. Let me know what movies you guys have seen and would recommend. For me personally, there's really nothing more I love than just kicking back and watching a nice film. That's gonna be it for this video. I'll see you guys next time. Peace, y'all.